So my mom raised me, like unintentionally, but she raised me with the idea that you do not fuck with the paranormal because you have no idea uh, what you're connecting to at all. Like, so basically her thing was like, don't even go there. Like, don't mess with no Ouija boards, don't mess with no tarot card, like nothing. Don't do it. Um, and so, that's not really ever been like a thing that I was, really interested in pursuing anyway. I know a lot of people are very much into like, ooh, the paranormal and ghosts. And, I watched X-Files too, and it was great. I love that show. But that's not ever something that I really ever, did. It was just like, I'm not gonna mess with that. I don't know anything about it. And I have friends who like do go to places, like museums and like haunted places. And one of the dudes was talking about, okay, this is what he said. He said, we went to the museum with the creepy haunted dolls and stuff. He's like, it's really weird. We went to the museum and then I felt like really tired out of nowhere. And he's like, I don't even really believe in ghosts or anything like that, but I was like really exhausted. I'm like, yeah, I've usually got a ton of energy. And this is the kind of guy who like, he like takes his vitamins and he exercises and he, he's real fit, real in shape. And I remember thinking to myself, like, man, you don't even know what's, like, I don't even know that ghosts are a thing, but if they are, like, what are you doing? So, that was like a couple weeks ago. And then for some reason last night, I came across something called, it was like ghost hunting hangover or fatigue. Like all these ghost hunters were talking about how like, yeah, you just get really tired and you have to like take so much time to recover. And I swear to God, there's a point here. And you have to take so much time to recover and it feels like you're like a battery that's been drained. And, one person said something like, ghosts have to use a lot of energy to manifest and to like do stuff. And most people were talking about it in terms of like, like, oh, they might, take energy from your batteries and stuff. And other people were like, yeah, they might be taking it from you too. Anyway, but the point was that like after a night of ghost hunting, these people are fucking exhausted. Just beyond what normal exhaustion would feel like. And I remember back to my friend who, wanted to go explore like some demon possessed mirrors, some haunted dolls and like whatever. And it suddenly reminded me actually of what living with, at least for me, what living with an abusive person was like. And I don't know if it's like the fact that, you're constantly in fight or flight and your like stress hormones are going all the time, or if it's like the psychological thing where you're constantly having to be on your guard and you're just constantly like projecting, thinking. But the way somebody described their experience with like this so stupid paranormal situation, I was like, oh man, that's what it was like. That's what it was like with my ex. Like we would start having this like art and I would suddenly be exhausted. Like it was like boom, all of my energy, like I could have been totally fine, and then we started on one of the abuse dynamic discussion arguments that we'd have where he's just constant, and I would just be like so exhausted. And so it was really interesting to like be on my own, finally when I know he's like quarantine hit and I was like, okay, he's not coming around, like I can finally relax. Oh my gosh, I had so much energy to do things and like verve for life in a sense, and I wasn't so like obsessively thinking. It was like, oh man, I can just let this go. Like he's not coming back around. Like I'm good. I mean, he did drop off. He did drop off like some stuff, and I like, I think it was like 11 o'clock at night. I hopped right in my car and I drove that shit right over and I left it on his front porch. Well, technically his mother's front porch, but anyway, I I just, so I was like reading these people and talk about these paranormal experiences they had and how exhausted they get. And I just, for some reason, their description of it made me go, oh my God, that's what this felt like. Like we'd have this whole thing and then I need like a day to recover, It, it's kind of interesting how we talk about, with narcissists, like narcissistic supply. And it really is like you're this, and I've heard people talk about it like you're this battery, this emotional battery for them that they feed off of. There's this concept of like emotional vampires and whatever. And there's definitely some kind of, like it impacts us in our body, it impacts us in our emotions and our feeling states. There's a reason like they're finally out of our orbit and we start feeling like we miss them. We might feel those feelings, but like we start to feel better when we're not having to deal with like an abuse situation. So it's been pretty interesting for me, because my ex-husband, my child's father, this was kind of more a classic case of abuse where, everything seemed fine for like 8 years. And then we have our kid and then suddenly, boom, that was the trigger for some of his abusive behaviors, particularly financially, because I was a stay-at-home mom. And then so now, we're divorced, we're disentangled financially, and now we're like really great co-parents. So I've actually had this experience of like a non-abuse dynamic with him, then an abuse dynamic, and then a non-abuse dynamic again. And I will say, like, the impact, the physical impact on me is different. When we were kind of like in it and there was all that stuff going on and all that stress and the emotions and everything. Oh man, I want to say I aged like hard. I aged so hard in like this chunk of time. It was bananas. The impact on my body. And I always just remember back to that episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Deanna Troi is helping some mediator guy, and they do some like crystal ceremony, and he starts dumping all his negative emotions into her. And there really is this transference, when you're dealing with the abusive person. If you're like, oh, I'm a happy, go lucky person, like regularly, and then suddenly, and the abusers are almost always pretty negative and critical and judgmental, and then like suddenly it's like there's all this like emotional weight, and it feels like it impacts me physically. So anyway, I just want to pass this along because there seems like there's so many there's so much more going on than we realize. I know for me and from what I read, people tend to think of these incidences as being like very discreet, but it seems like it's this long-term drain on our like physical and emotional well-being. That's why it's really hard to articulate. So anyway, hope this makes sense. I'll talk to you next time.